Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people love to search out on the internet for. They listen to infomercials on television or probably hear word of mouth from friends. And that is ways that they can innovate, become entrepreneurs, and discover and profit from businesses and technology instead of working for someone else. Joining us here on the program today is a guest that we've had here on the program before. He is author of the book Minitrends. It's how innovators, entrepreneurs can discover and profit from business and technology trends. I'd like to welcome both him and his daughter here on the Beyond 50 radio program today, Dr. John Vanston and Carrie Vanston, Marketing Director of Technology Futures Incorporated. Thank you both for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate being invited.
You betcha. Carrie, you on the air?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Now, Carrie, I have to ask you, how did you decide to follow in your father's footsteps? Usually kids like to run the other direction.
Well, he has been working in trends analysis and forecasting for many, many years, and we've been encouraging him to write a book for a long time now, and we finally got him to do it. And so I volunteered to help him out with it. And we really have had a great time getting together ideas to help other people do what we've been doing, but doing it on their own, finding and profiting from many trends that they find.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing. When you take a look at many trends, for people who, try to get involved with, let's say, investing, or there was the other one where you do currency trading, you hear about a trend is your friend. It's the way that you spot that you're going to start seeing consistencies in a particular behavior and learning how to take advantage of that at the right times. John, if you could, tell us how you started getting involved in all this, and then kind of maybe move into how you began to do what it is that you do.
Well, I've been involved, as Carrie said, in tech forecasting for over 3 decades.
30 years.
Eventually
Wow.
decided some of the experiences I'd had in background, not only individually but within a company, would be of use to everybody. And so, as Carrie said, people encouraged me to write a book. And so I've been in forecasting, like I say, a long time. And so I made a forecast. The book would be completed in about 4 months. And sure enough, only 17 months later did we actually publish the book.
Now let's talk about trends in and of themselves, what they are, and how you can begin to do the research, I guess, such as what you describe in your book.
Okay, well, the first place to remind people what many trends are, everybody is familiar with the term megatrends, but these are big things that make major changes in society, moving from an industrial age to an innovation age, moving from global marketing to global marketing. But these are really big things that happen, and for most people, they're not of much real value because they're too general and they're too well known. But within these mega trends, there are many trends. Many trends are emerging trends that are of scope and importance to represent attractive business opportunities for individuals and organizations. The question that comes up, of course, how do you find these many trends? And in our book, we list 7 different ways. Just like chat about a couple of them that I think are particularly important. One of them is follow the money. If you remember that Deep Throat in the scandal, he told the people, the reporters for the Washington Post, that follow the money. And I think that if you're looking at these trends, unless there's money involved, then they're not likely to go very far. So the question is, where is the money? Well, of course, there are venture capital funds, there are angels, there are groups within various companies, but to a large extent, a real source for income is the government. And it turns out that the federal government really and truly tries to promote new trends, new innovations. Just for example, the National Science Foundation. That has to be the forefront of technical development, and they by law have to tell what they have funded and also the areas that they're interested in funding. You have 2 small business programs, the Small Business Innovative Research Program and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. These by law, all the major agencies are required to put a certain percentage of their research funds into small businesses. Again, they have to tell what they're interested in. They have to tell what they're funded. Again, this is by law. If you look at the U.S. Government Patent Office, the Government Patent Office issues about 150,000 patents each year. For people to get a patent, it has to be original, it has to be useful, and it has to be non-obvious. Now, only about 8% of these patents ever get into actual products. So what you have is the government has done the research on these things. They have to publish all of the patents or patent applications they've seen. So here's a treasure chest for people to go and look and find these things that fall in that category. One of the government projects that we think is particularly interesting is one called Incutel. About 10 years ago, we were approached by the Central Intelligence Agency. It turns out that they felt that they had to be in the forefront of technology. So they had typically dealt with the large laboratories, the Lincoln Labs at MIT, General Electric Labs, the Boeing Labs, and so forth. But they had found that the really innovative things were not coming from these big labs, but they were coming from small companies, startup companies, and government agencies. Universities. So these people, for the most part, were not interested in dealing with the government because they took too long, and they particularly weren't interested in dealing with the intelligence agencies because if they came up with a good product, then usually they were not able to take advantage of it because of security reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked us if we could work with them and try to figure out a way to get these people involved. So we worked with a company, with Arthur Anderson and with the legal funds in Washington called Arnold & Porter, and we came up with this idea that the government would set up, the Central Intelligence Agency would set up this agency who would serve as a venture capitalist. They would talk to the CIA and find out what they were interested in, and then they would then go out and find people who were doing research in this area, and they would then fund that research, and then it would come back to this group, the Intel group, and then they would take it and forward it back to the CIA. So the people were able to fund these ideas without getting involved in all the security requirements and the red tape.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be very successful, and several of the other government agencies now are using this. Incutel, the Intel obviously comes from intelligence. Can you guess where the Q comes from?
I couldn't imagine.
Well, if you're a James Bond fan, the super scientist he has working for him is called Q, and so that's where we got the Q back in.
Oh, okay.
Now, so this is one of the things that can do to help the people who are in your audience to begin to find these things. Another area that we found that was approach we found was useful was to analyze frustrations. Life has all kinds of frustrations. You're in the long waiting lines at restaurants. You have the people, the mosquitoes on picnics. So you find surly sales clerks. So you keep running to these things where people are frustrated. Sometimes people can actually take these frustrations and make business opportunities out of it. In 1997, Reed Hastings was fined $40 for being late return of a videotape. He was really unhappy about that because the $40 was about 3 times what the videotape cost him.
Oh yeah.
But then he went that afternoon. He went to his athletic club, and what they did there, they had a set fee that you paid per month, and for that you could use any of the equipment you wanted to. You could use as much of it as you wanted to. If what you wanted was busy at that time, then you could use a different piece of equipment. But hey, I think that might be a model for video and CDs, DVDs, game rentals, and the result of that, of course, was Netflix, which has been very successful. We had locally an example of a person who made a business out of frustration here in the city of Austin. About 2 years ago, the woman by the name of Ellie Scarborough, her boyfriend called her up one day. She'd been going with him for about 2 years, and he said, well, it's not my fault, it's your fault, of course. I mean, not your fault, it's my fault, of course. But anyway, he broke up with her in the telephone. Well, Ellie was devastated. according to what she said, she had trouble eating, she couldn't sleep, she couldn't concentrate on her job. So she decided she was going to do something about this. And so she went to the florist and she said, here are my 3 favorite colors. I want you to make up a bouquet of flowers in these colors, and the biggest one you've ever made, and send it to my office next Monday. But sure enough, she came to the office next Monday, and here was this great big bouquet of flowers, and everybody asked her, saying, who is it from? She says, gosh, I don't know. And sure enough, the next week she sent herself another bouquet of flowers, and then the week after that, she sent herself a box of candy. And she always seemed real surprised where it was. Well, she knew she was kidding herself, but on the other hand, she said, I felt better about it. So she said, this is something I think there might be other people who might be interested in this type of thing. And so she started her own company called Pink Kisses. And what this does, if you have somebody, if yourself in this area or some of your friends, you sign up for a month or 2 months, and during that time, she does a number of different things. She'll send flowers, she'll send candy, she'll send you emails to say, the guy didn't deserve you. You're much better than he is. And as the final thing, if you want to, she will if you'll send him a picture of the man, then they will do some incantations over, put a few curses on him, and then they will burn his picture. And they'll videotape all this and send it to people. So it seemed like there are a lot of these people who are in this situation, both male and female, and it looks like the business is going very well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how these things kind of pop up, and then after they really take hold, they blow up. A few people have made some money, then all of a sudden you see in the media that, oh, geez, it was just one of these obvious things that was right there in front of you. Why didn't you get on board? Then you kind of leaves you scratching your head. But actually, a mini trend, it just doesn't happen really overnight, does it?
That's right. The key of the mini trends is the fact that most people don't appreciate it. So the question is that how you can help to identify these things as they come along.
Mm-hmm.
I might say the real mystery to me is that figure out how the guy broke up with her. She's a very attractive woman. She's got a good sense of humor. She's intelligent. So I think he made a big mistake. We think this is one of the things. The way that by approaching this like this, you can begin to the people who are listening to your program in a way that they can begin to find some of these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess an answer to your question about the guy there, John, is I can certainly appreciate that Carrie could probably answer this better than we could. Carrie, I mean, you're an attractive woman. Guys can just be stupid sometimes, can't they?
Well, no, they're not smart enough for you if they dump you for no reason, like Ellie's boyfriend did. He just needed a smarter guy.
Now, I know that your job, with this company is to really kind of take the language and make it to where, I guess, call it the layperson can come to understand. And usually I think that's what really is one of the discouraging marks with doing something like this is that the language kind of may seem technical. There's that jargon. You're trying to figure out how this all works. And so you just basically drop the ball because we're in a day and an age that people, they hear so often. It's quick, it's easy, it's fun, and you get in and you do something maybe like tracking a mini trend or a trend period, and there's all these things that you've got to begin to relearn about, for instance, the language to be able to know what it is these people are saying. That doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun. It certainly isn't easy, and it certainly isn't quick. But you kind of help try to sort of meet those things, don't you, Carrie?
Yes. Really, the book is written for a broad audience, so that people,
including stupid guys who break up with good-looking, intelligent girlfriends, right?
Well, we're looking for people that are wanting to start new ventures. We're looking to help people that are already in businesses and want to improve their business or stand out in their business. And so many of the approaches that John was talking about, you need some way to actually do research on those. Once you have a frustration or something and you identify it, and what's the next step? And so we talk a lot in the book about where to look for mini trends once you have something of interest. And we suggest a lot of different places, utilizing published sources, electronic sources. One of the things that I really love, and some of the stuff that I gave a lot of input toward, was the social networking and going to events. I find this to be particularly one for me to encourage people to do to find mini trends, because a study was done, and 2/3 of the useful information that people found useful came from discussions with colleagues, and of that third that was found in literature, more than half were recommended by colleagues. So obviously, knowing people and talking to people, interacting with people is really a useful way to find ideas for once you start looking for mini trends. Right now, with social media, it really becomes much more easy. For example, we suggest people go to association meetings and conferences and try to hook up with people that know about the ideas that you're interested in your own interests, and then you can bounce ideas off them. You can read what they write about, those kind of things. So with social media, if you meet somebody in an event or at a conference or wherever, you can actually hook up with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw you at the conference. I'd love to, be connected with you. Would you like to, be a LinkedIn friend? And then you have a direct contact with them. Or you can look up on Google and find out if they have a blog and sign up with their blog, and then you get to hear, information from them directly on what they think. Another thing that really is great about that is that it helps for convergent reasons. John is actually going to, I think, going to talk a little bit about that, hopefully. He's got a lot to say about convergence. But you can bring different ideas to what you want, like if you're, like, for example, somebody who read the book named Wayne Caswell, he was really interested in home health care, independent living, and aging. And he did some studying, and he came up with a great idea for a website that was basically for older people looking for places to stay, and he's had just ideas on where to go the next step in life, and he set up a whole website, and he's been doing really well monetizing that with the idea of converging these different things. That about aspects of these three together. So there's a lot of advice in the book about that. Lots of websites are given, URLs are given. That's real important to give people some really great ideas on what they can do to go out there and find mini trends that are of interest to them and that they can monetize.
And you really hit on a key point. First of all, it's about relationships. Just recently I was reading a book called The Tipping Point, and that's one of the big things that is really brought up in this particular book, is that it isn't about the friends that that really, create the success on the information that you get, but it's really the multitude of relationships that you have or acquaintances. And, for instance, there was a particular parlor game they were talking about in there is how many actors can you associate with Kevin Bacon? And, I mean, they were able to actually go back as far as Mary Pickford. And for those on the program who may or may not know who Mary Pickford is, she's a silent screen actress, and she can be related to Kevin Bacon through one or two other actors. And the whole idea is to see how few actors you can go through to connect, say, Sylvester Stallone to Kevin Bacon. And they had discovered through this particular game that they tried to find out in the least amount of steps the actor that is most connected through actors in the history of, let's say, acting in Hollywood, and they came out with Rod Steiger. And the reason is because this guy's been in B movies, he's been on stage, he's been in great movies, he's been in flops, and so he really moved around a lot, so that made him the most accessible actor to pretty much every other actor you can think of within like 2.5 steps. And certainly that's what you're talking about here, right, Carrie?
If you look at the LinkedIn, I mean, I'm amazed. I find that to be such an incredible tool. But it's so funny because as you add people, which people are very open to that, we feel that it's one of the really best links up if you want to link up with other professional people. But so many times I'll look on there and there'll be first order, second order, or third order of a friend of mine. You know, it's just a web. It just goes everywhere. Another interesting thing about LinkedIn, there's just something called answers. And you can you can ask a question there about your mini trend or your interest, and professionals within LinkedIn, it's actually the LinkedIn people, will answer your questions. It's really, really neat that you have that feedback from people that know what you're talking about right there in front of you. So LinkedIn is an incredible tool, along with several other tools that we mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were mentioning earlier, Carrie, and we'll certainly let your father kind of run with this one here about convergence. Now, this day and age, the big concern here, we are in an election year, is the economy. People, wondering if they're going to get jobs. What are we going to do about a banking system that's basically cheated a lot of people? And you really are seeing a trend now that's been happening in the last couple of years where people, you can actually go online and you can get an idea funded through many people contributing a little bit. Now, this tends to be a trend to where, as you were saying, that frustration plateau has basically starting to hit that point where people are going to say, you're not working for me anymore. We're going to find another way to do this. And so you're finding ways to go out there. In fact, it was just featured on the front cover of our local newspaper about, somebody had an idea, an invention, whatever the case was. They went online to this particular site that people said, yeah, we'll go ahead and fund your idea, and hopefully they'll get their money back. But let's talk about the trend like in banking when it comes to things like that and this convergence that Carrie was mentioning earlier.
Daniel, I think I'm going to ask you to write a chapter in my next book.
Certainly. We're certainly trying to get our show, to do what it does. I know that it's kind of funny. People say, well, by default that you're on the Internet, you're a world audience. And I said, well, interestingly enough, I say that because people are actually contacting us from outside of the United States, with guest ideas and so forth. So we're certainly, trying to do what we do, but that's what we do is we try to serve our audience. But go ahead.
We find it very often that the convergence of different ideas, people together, just like you mentioned there, is an extremely important, powerful idea. As a matter of fact, we're planning to have a conference this coming June here in Austin, in which we're going to have several different panels. We'll have a panel to talk about many trends in education, many trends in government service, many trends in energy, many trends in telecommunications and so forth. And then we'll say, okay, now where do these overlap? So I think that we think this is going to be very useful to people to begin to see opportunities where different technologies are beginning to come together.
Now, as we talk about convergence, okay, our listeners sitting here and they're thinking to themselves, okay, many trends, how do I get on board? Carrie, you've certainly, given a great aspect. You want to get out there and you want to shake and mix with people. You can't just wait for hearsay. You've really got to be out there listening for what it is that you're interested in. So would you say between both of you that as you want to follow, let's say, a mini trend or several mini trends, it's about what your area of interest is or your area of aggravation?
Yeah, I think that's. I think that when you look, people begin to see, here's a mini trend I want to see if I want to follow on this line. I think you need to look at two different things. First is how valuable is it to the audience as a whole or the customer base as a whole, and the other is what interests you. That life is short, and so if the mini trends you're looking at is not something that gives you pleasure, that you're not enjoying, that you don't like to be involved in more, then it's not likely to be very successful.
Now, you talked earlier, John, about follow the money. That's one of the first steps that a person can take. So how do you go about doing that again?
Well, the thing, of course, like there are many different groups there. If you go into a company or you go into a venture capitalist, you do one thing. What I was stressing is the fact that the government is really set up to try to help you to get money. They tell you what they're interested in. They have to, by law, tell you what they funded and so forth. And so by taking advantage of these things, I think that's one way you begin to indicate where the money is.
For example, NQTel that he was talking about earlier, you can actually go to their site and they will have the projects that they are presently looking at right now and funding right now. So you can actually see the top 10, the things that they are actually funding. And, if they relate to your area of interest, you can get an idea and a feel for what is going on in that industry as an emerging industry.
This kind of leads into a thing that Carrie touched on there, the importance of associations. There are hundreds of associations. There's an association for bearded Santa Clauses all the way up to nuclear physicists. So each of these different associations, they have meetings, they have publications, they have panels set up and so forth. And this is a good way, just to touch on what you talked about there, not only associating with different people, but also people that have common interests with yours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've found sort of interesting in looking at Minitrends coming up is to examine the platforms of losing presidential candidates. Everybody pays attention to the ones who win, but often you'll find that there's some very important ideas that come out of the people who lose. For example, in 1956, one of Adlai Stevenson's platforms to look for a ban on nuclear testing, and he, of course, was defeated. But in 1963, Ronald Reagan signed such a treaty. Barry Goldwater, in his 1964 campaign, he stressed the idea of a highly conservative platform. And he lost, but he laid the groundwork for the Reagan Revolution. In the 2000 campaign, Al Gore pressed the idea of global warming and climate change. And, of course, he lost the result. But as a result of his work, has gotten an Academy Award, a Grammy Award, an Emmy Award, and a Nobel Prize. So a lot of times, like I say, the things that are the losing candidates is presented actually can be more interesting as far as identifying Minitrends.
John, it's interesting that you should bring that up. I can't help myself on this one, but I'm going to take a shot anyway. Here we are. I just mentioned about how people are frustrated with the banking system. Okay, so they're finding ways to get around that, and it's something that's working, and it seems to be working well. Because it's gone back to the individual that basically loans their friends some money, and there's probably a good chance that friend's going to pay it back, just because there's a loyalty there. Mm-hmm. The banks have lost a lot of this loyalty. Okay. Now, talking about the presidential election, sometimes you kind of wonder, okay, well, in this group of people, who's really got anything going on when it comes to this losing category that you're talking about? Al Gore was a perfect example, one of the first things that came to mind. But back to the banking system again. We have this guy by the name of Ron Paul in your neighborhood. He wants to dismantle, or at least one of his goals, the Federal Reserve. Do you see a mini trend there?
I think of many of that particular one haven't looked at, but I think the bank industry, there's a lot. I also noticed one of the things that Ron Paul is stressing is he wants to do away with marriage license. He figures the government shouldn't have any way of getting involved with marriages. That's a personal thing. So there's some of his. I agree with a lot of his ideas, mm-hmm. But on the other hand, some are a little far out.
Well, the far out idea was the personal computer as well. So I don't know. I thought about that when you talked about the losing candidate, and his certainly stood out for me, especially in light of what's going on. And I thought, I wonder if there's a mini trend worth starting to track here, because obviously he's probably not going to become president. But
but you do have a point. I mean, if people are getting more suspicious of bankers and they are going to smaller banks and neighborhood banks, what does that mean? Is there, you could do research and maybe find something that might be valuable to you. So that's something that you could conceivably look into. Mm-hmm. And you could make a portion off of it, Daniel.
Certainly get a residual income on your website, starting on something like this. Now, Carrie, you mentioned earlier, and I know we talked fairly at length about this the last time that you were here on the program, but you talked about LinkedIn. Now, when Facebook hit the scene, and I know MySpace, had its time as well, especially when it came to if you had a music group and you wanted to promote your events and where you were going to be and your albums and so forth. But that became kind of one of those websites that faded away, especially when it came to getting viruses, so people were kind of staying off of that. Facebook came up, and then all of a sudden, as a small business, you thought, oh, here's a nice little shortcut. It's free. You know, I can get out there and I can promote my business and watch the money come in. But now there's frustrations with Facebook because of the fact of how they actually share information. There's a lot of controversy about what's going on there. And then you talk about LinkedIn. So if you could just briefly describe the differences between the two and how a person may be tracking trends or who's in a small business who wants to use social media, which one would have the greater advantages over the other?
I'm finding LinkedIn to be really great. We actually have a Minitrends. We have a Minitrend website, but we also have a Minitrends linked Facebook. And I think it is good to have that. But I really find LinkedIn so strong because Facebook tends to be more friends, and LinkedIn is very professional oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of, like I said, there's answers, questions where you can, it's called answers, but you can ask questions. But there's also, you can join groups there. And people feel quite comfortable if they know you, usually to be friends with them. And you can actually, if you meet somebody somewhere and you have their business card, you can look them up on there, and chances are they're there, and you can write a little note. Usually it's better to write a note. You have to be sure to say, I met you last night or whatever, and often, they're perfectly willing to be friends with you. Well, once you're friends with them, if you write something, everybody all of those people will get that note under updates. And so you suddenly have, it's not exactly like email, but you have a way to push your stuff, whatever you're asking or whatever you're wanting to tell other people. But besides that, there's also groups within there, and something that I've done is there's like a group on emerging trends, for example. I joined Emerging Trends, and I joined the World Future Society because I'm very interested in emerging trends, and John and I are involved with this. And the Emerging Trends has got like 1,000 members, and World Future Society, the local one, only has like maybe 30. And so everybody can post articles they think are interesting, or questions or answers or even whatever, and suddenly within these groups you have people that you're responding to because you make comments on it back and forth. So you can actually, I've joined about 30 of them, and so I sort of keep track of what other people are doing. And then when we just won the Pinnacle Award for our book. So I put the word out that we'd won the Pinnacle Award under the promotional part that you can do that with. Then under the regular part, John did an article on the 9 mini-trends that we discussed in the book. We discussed 9 in more detail in the middle of the book. I put an article up about that, talking about that. So there's just all sorts of tools within LinkedIn that are just very valuable. I hear Google Plus is very good too. I haven't actually done anything with that, but I've heard that's very valuable. That's going to be very valuable.
So it sounds to me like the difference between Facebook and LinkedIn would be Facebook is bake the cookies, and LinkedIn you're more interested in selling and innovating them.
I think it's the relationship is stronger there, but I do recommend people putting up a Facebook fan page on their companies when they get started because it is still popular.
That was an interesting analogy, but Daniel, one of the things that you mentioned earlier about talking about Facebook, the fact that there too much information, personal information, is going out. You may remember one of the many trends I talk about in the book is increased interest in privacy. That people are beginning to worry about all these things going out, and once it gets there, then it gets on Facebook, it stays there forever.
Yeah, it affects people and potential jobs, or there's a lot of things that it starts to affect.
Yeah, I was at a meeting of human resources people not too long ago, and they were talking about the fact that if you have too much information on the web there, you can put things can be found that you don't really want to have everybody know about or see. But they say that in looking at job applicants, they will definitely look at at their Facebook and their LinkedIn and so forth. But they said if people don't have anything, if they're not really involved in these things, they probably won't be hired because they say they're not up with what's happening in the society.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. You pretty much have to know something about it.
Just be careful what it is that you know. And, it's not a matter of who or what you know, it's how you use who you know or what you know, I guess. I'd like both of you to tackle this one as we're kind of running short on time here, but what do you find it to be one of the more interesting, approaches when it comes to uncovering many trends that our listeners could kind of say, this really seems like a real Sherlock Holmes sleuth kind of fun sort of thing, because by nature we're curious, and again, when you talk about tracking a trend or trying to follow a startup company from beginning to where they do the IPO, again, everybody likes the big bang. Everybody says, geez, I wished I would have invested in Apple when it was in the garage, or Microsoft, or Intel. But one of the world's greatest investors, Warren Buffett, never invested in Intel, and he took the heat for that for years, but he simply says, look, I don't understand that stuff, that's why I don't invest in it. But we all think, geez, we've really missed the boat, but in truth, as you both are saying here, no, there's plenty of little boats out there you can jump on.
Yeah, that's true. One of you talk about different ideas there, that one of the ones that kind of strikes me as of interest is to look at demographics. That if I look at the world and the way I see it, and I look at the world that Carrie sees it, we see just different things. We see different worlds. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you go to my grandchildren, then you see they have a look at a different world than Carrie and I do. So I think that by looking at how things are changing and how they're staying the same between these different age cohorts, I think a lot of times new ideas begin to emerge from that.
Another thing is that the types of people that you're talking about, Warren Buffett, we specifically mention him in the book as being a person that you should pay attention to. Mm-hmm. If you want to know what the next big thing is, he seems to have a pretty good feel for it. You kind of keep track of people that are leaders in whatever industry you're interested in, so that when they have an idea or an inkling, you're on top of it too.
Exactly. And the thing about him is that he keeps it simple. The idea is that you have to understand what it is you're involved with. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. We've actually had his former daughter-in-law on our program, and there's a wonderful biography about him. It's called The Snowball. And you start reading through this, and not only does it come to investing to sound like, this could be a lot of fun, but it's extremely intriguing all at the same time. So as people get into, your book, Following Minitrends here, or Minitrends is the title of the book, is that, start to learn the language, and start to get involved. You're going to find yourself in a world with ideas that even within your own business, you could be selling popcorn, and all of a sudden you start doing something different simply because, as you were saying, John, you begin to change the perception of how you see the world. People who would go, how did you think about turning it into chocolate or fudge-flavored popcorn, which is what you're starting to see now? Popcorn's been around for how many centuries?
Yep.
You throw some chocolate on it, sell it for $2.50 a bag, and people are just going crazy over this. The most obvious thing.
This is slightly off the subject, but let me just kind of mention this because I find this sort of intriguing. People who start these, get these new ideas and start the new innovative companies and so forth. The question is, what are the characteristics of these people? The friend of mine, Carl Vesper, who's one of the top academics in the field of innovation, he did a survey. He looked at 4 different people had listed the characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, and of course he ran across the normal things: the fact that good successful entrepreneurs, they are interested, they are committed, that they are workaholics, and so forth. But he found that the one characteristic that was listed highest among all the different groups there was to stay healthy. You don't think about that, but he wasn't sure whether it was because of the fact that people didn't become entrepreneurs unless they were healthy, or they being entrepreneurial kept them healthy, or if they just didn't have time to get sick. But I think that was kind of interesting, that people who are interested in getting these new ideas and trying to start new businesses or bring new business within new approaches within their company it's important that they do stay healthy.
Well, you certainly will take a lot more action if you're out there, shaking and moving and perhaps even running the track or pumping weights every once in a while versus the guy that likes to sit in the bar, with his friends after work and talk about great ideas but never take any action on them.
Well, the other thing is it's healthy to be pursuing something that you feel passionate about and that you feel good about. And that's the other thing, there's no point in chasing mini trends if there's not mini trends that make you happy. And so I think that's one of the things we talk about in the book, too, is, follow your bliss. Find something that you love and then find an opportunity for that. And that's part of what the book is all about, is instead of just waiting for mini trends to come to you, actually proactively go out there and find something within your interest that you can concentrate on. It's a business opportunity.
Well, it's just like you said, too, John. It's about putting on a different pair of glasses so you see a lot more opportunity around you than you think. I mean, we can all sit passively, and especially in this election year, and we can listen to the media tell us about how bad the economy is, how there's a lack of jobs. We can point our fingers out to all of who we can blame, including banks for swindling our money and bad real estate, and China's taken over, and all these things. But the truth is, and I'm hearing it clearly from both of you, is there is so much opportunity around you. The choice is, do you choose to wake up and take advantage of it, or do you choose to fall in with the herd of the sheep? And you know how a herd of sheep is, especially if you're in the middle. You don't see much of anything but a lot of wool and fleecing. I want to thank both of you for being here on the program today. Again, the book is Minitrends, Finding and Profiting from Emerging Trends. Our guests, Dr. John Vanston and his daughter, Carrie Vanston. Give us a website people can find out more about this.
www.minitrends.com.
Why did I know you were going to give it to me? I want to thank both of you for being here on the program today. It's been a pleasure. We'll look forward to having you again.
Very good. We enjoyed it ourselves, and we look forward to further contact in the future.
You bet. Take care.
Thank you, Daniel.
We also want to thank you, the listeners out there. Again, the book is Minitrends. You want to pick that up so you can put on a different pair of eyeglasses and see the world in a way that you probably have never seen before. Very exciting when you've got a fresh view. I'm Daniel Davis. I encourage you to visit our website, which is beyond50radio.com, the number 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. We again thank you for tuning in. This is Beyond 50, and remember, live your day past halfway.